Morning, everybody. Hello, hello. I'm looking at the comments before I begin. People are so pleasant. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, all. Good morning from Montreal. Hello from Staten Island. Hello from Naples, Florida. I'm envious, Debbie. Hot in Naples, but it's going to be hot in Philly today. It's going to be hot in the northeastern part of the country today. So, big story that I'm eager to discuss. The headline from the Times: Facebook keeps a ban on Trump until early 2023. It's getting a lot of attention, and it's something that I discussed last night with Chris Cuomo. And I knew that he was going to come to me and say, "So, what do you make of it? Is it a good or a bad thing that Donald Trump has been banned by Facebook? He's already permanently banned by Twitter. Remember that. But is it a good or a bad thing that Donald Trump has now been banned at least through the midterm election?" And I'm sure I disappointed him and will disappoint some of you when I say it's just not something you can answer yes or no. It's complicated. Uh, Donald Trump deserved to be punished for the way that he conducted himself on their platform, but it was unfair to Donald Trump. That's my answer. He deserved punishment, but he's being treated unfairly. And the reason that I say that, well, actually, a couple of things at the outset, a couple of fundamental thoughts. Number one, Facebook can do whatever Facebook wants. I hear this discussed as a First Amendment situation. It's not. Facebook's a private actor. They're under no obligation to adhere to the First Amendment. Are there some loosely described free speech issues here? There are. Did the Facebook Oversight Board seem to rely on American common law and principles of the First Amendment when they decided what they were going to do? They did. But if you want to be precise in your language, this is not a First Amendment case. Facebook can handle Donald Trump in whatever manner Facebook decides. So that's point number one. Point number two is that I believe Donald Trump incited the events of January 6th. You want to call them an insurrection? I do. Fine. You don't? Fine. Whatever it is that happened on January 6th, I think he was an accelerant. I think he was the guy who lit the fuse. And if you remember, what finally caused him to be banned from Facebook initially and then now more seemingly permanent is that he delayed in his response in the afternoon of January 6th, right? Everything was going down and Trump was nowhere to be found, probably because this is exactly the outcome that he hoped for. And then finally, he put out a videotape and he encouraged people to go home. But in telling people to go home, he said, "We love you, you're special. We love you, you're special." And that was what finally caused Mark Zuckerberg, before he parceled this responsibility out and created a Facebook-style Supreme Court, to put a ban on Trump. And now that ban has been implemented through the midterm election. I think that the issue is bigger than Donald Trump. And here's sort of the egghead analysis. I think that this calls into question Section 230. And Section 230 are those words, less than 20 words. It's 47 USC Section 230 for the nerds among us. These are the words of so-called Section 230. No provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. What does that word salad mean? That word salad means that under the law, and think about, for example, the law of defamation, we treat a phone company different from a newspaper or a television outlet or a radio outlet. In other words, one of them is just a stovepipe. One of them is just a deliverer of content. That would be the telephone line. But if you defame someone in a telephone conversation, if you say something about someone that's false and defamatory over the telephone, and it subjects that person to ridicule and scorn. So all the classic elements of defamation. You can't sue the phone company and say, well, you transmitted that information. Or maybe it would be a circumstance of hate speech. You don't hold the phone company responsible. But if a newspaper printed, or a radio station or a television station printed something, published something that was false and defamatory, they would be held accountable. So Section 230, set forth by Congress, says, hey, internet platforms, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, we are going to treat you like the phone company and not the newspaper or the radio station or the TV outlet. That's what Facebook and the others enjoy, immunity for everything that goes on their platform. But in this case, when Facebook now gets involved and starts to act like an editor at a newspaper, I think they're calling into question whether they're deserving of the immunity that Section 230 provides them. So that's one of the issues that's on my mind. Taking on the responsibility of policing their platform, I think, puts them in a different realm. But here's the other consideration that I have. When I say that Trump deserved it, but it was unfair, when I say unfair, here's what I mean. Can this possibly be true? I read last night that there are nearly 3 billion Facebook users worldwide, which then caused me to say, well, how many people live on the planet? And that number is somewhere near 8 billion. Is there another service? Is there another private product that 3 billion people on the planet, I mean, how many, I don't know, drink Coke? I don't know. Is there any other commercial equivalent out there? I don't think so. And so with 3 billion users, it's literally impossible for Facebook to maintain some sense of regulation of that fire hose of postings and information. They can't do it. And artificial intelligence won't allow them to do it. You know why artificial intelligence won't allow them to do it? I just read a funny story today. I don't know if I have it. Oh, I do have it at my fingertips. Pardon me while I digress. There's a story in the Times today about Google. It's kind of funny. It was an odd, unanswerable question. Still, it was on the mind of at least one Google user in India. What is the country's ugliest, quote unquote, language? For anyone who typed that question into the platform's search bar recently, its algorithm produced a fact box confident of an answer, a tongue called Kannada, spoken by tens of millions of people in India's south. Informed of that result, many of them weren't happy. Several politicians in the state of Karnataka, where most Kannada speakers live, went on social media this week to register their outrage. Well, what is my point? My point is it shows the shortcomings of algorithms or artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is not enough to police all the things that get posted at Facebook. So Facebook has a literally impossible task of providing the same level of scrutiny to all of its users that they provided to Donald Trump. And naturally, that's going to set up situations where there will be disparity of treatment. Hey, or whataboutism. You banished Trump because he said X, but look at this guy who is saying Y, and you're not doing anything about it. They can't stay on top of all of this. Stephen Levy wrote the definitive book on Facebook, and I've interviewed him several times, and this has always been a subject of fascination for me talking to him, because there's a part of his book where he discusses going into a Facebook monitoring lab. That's not what they called it, but a bunch of people in cubicles who are looking at content flashing across the screen and having to make an instantaneous decision as to whether that content stays or gets deleted. And we're talking the worst of the worst. We're talking hate speech, We're talking child pornography. We're talking about all the nasty stuff that some people among us want to try and put on a platform. They can't stay on top of it. So, okay, I get it. Some of you will say, well, make an example of him because he has such an enormous following. Or others will say a public figure, a person maybe with X level of followers, is going to get scrutinized in a way that others won't. But I don't like the disparate treatment. And I think the one thing I'm most assured of is that Facebook's handling of this circumstance has guaranteed that Facebook will continue to be a political football. I think they will rue the day when they got into the business of regulating content like this. It all began, by the way, I interviewed someone who wrote on this subject, Noah Feldman, the Harvard law professor. Noah Feldman apparently was a classmate of the number two, Zuckerberg's Sheryl, it'll come to me, the number two at Facebook. Her name is right on the tip of my tongue. Apparently they were Harvard classmates. He spent a weekend at her house or some such thing. The story is he went for a bike ride. All of a sudden he had an epiphany. Sheryl Sandberg. And the epiphany was Facebook needs a Supreme Court to try and establish rules and regulations for how to police its content. Comes back, pitches her the idea, and the rest is history. I just think it's an impossible task. Something else that struck me because I read the opinion that they issued in this case. Really interesting reading, at least I think. The ban will be at least 2 years. And then at the end of those 2 years, it says this. At the end of this period, we will look to experts to assess whether the risk to public safety has receded. We will evaluate external factors, including instances of violence, restrictions on peaceable assembly, and other markers of civil unrest. If we determine that there is still a serious risk to public safety, we will extend the restriction for a set period of time and continue to reevaluate until that risk has receded. Well, that confuses me. Are they saying that at the end of 2 years, they're going to evaluate whether Donald Trump has behaved himself? It doesn't sound that way to me. It sounds to me like they're going to evaluate the climate in America and decide whether it's safe for Trump to return. And one other consideration, if I may, this allows Trump to play the victim card if he can find a platform on which to play it. Because the blog that he set up, as you know, was a scratch, didn't do so well. But if he can get his voice, and he's speaking tonight in Las Vegas, I don't know who's going to cover it beyond, QAnon and Newsmax. I don't know. Will Fox cover it tonight? That'll be interesting to see. But there's something I don't like the way he uses these platforms. This is what I'm trying to say. I don't like the way he uses these platforms. I don't like the way he played this incitement role on January 6th using these platforms. But the idea of these media outlets, because that's what they are, making a decision for the American people without giving him due process and cutting off his access all over the place, there's something about that I don't like. It's not a First Amendment case, but it's a speech case that troubles me. I'd rather we deal with him at the ballot box. Not through a corporate entity wielding control over 3 billion people worldwide. Like, who elected Facebook? I find it troublesome. I've given you a lot of fodder here so that those who like to parse one part of what I've said and draw a conclusion, or a different part and come to a different conclusion, you'll have a field day. But the bottom line is Donald Trump deserved to be punished, and he's being treated unfairly. That's what I think. I'll read all these comments a little bit later in the day, okay? Actually, maybe I'm going to go fishing, so maybe I'll read them later tonight or tomorrow. But I thank you so much for watching. Please look at the other YouTube videos right here on this page because we have delivered some great content this week. So proud of it. A lot of good stuff. Give TC some play for TC After Dark with her brand new episode on radio rubbernecking. And I will see you on CNN shortly, I hope. Okay? Thanks, everybody.